Hey, sixth grade string players. Today we're going to be going through our first lesson and some exercises for you to work on. After you watch this video and practice these for a little bit, we'll meet for a lesson in person to go over them. So we're going to be on page 5 in your lesson book, so go ahead and take that out. And we're going to do a little review for the first couple of lessons on things that either we didn't get to last year or we just want to spend a little bit of extra time reviewing before we get into a lot of new things. So you can see on the top of this page in that yellow box, this is kind of like in our old lesson book, the white box had the new stuff in the top of every page. In this lesson book, it's the yellow box that has new things. So it says we're in the key of G major, and in your book, it's going to show you with your clef what the key of G major looks like. So I want you right now to point at that clef, and I want you to check to see if the key signature is a key signature that has sharps or a key signature that has flats. Okay? And hopefully you should recognize that it's a key signature with sharps, and actually it just has one sharp. And we know that if there's only one sharp in a key signature, that is always going to be F sharp. So on this page, everything we play is going to have F sharps, but that also means that every other note is natural. So we're thinking ahead here that our C's and our G's are going to be natural, especially if you're a violin. You're going to have to play low twos this week. Cellos and violas, you don't have to deal with that this week. That's a next lesson thing for you. But for violins, we have to be very careful of those low twos that we spent some time working on at the beginning of last year. And then the other new thing in that box is a new tempo marking. Tempo tells us how fast or slow to go, what speed our music should be, and that tempo marking is allegro. That's a word that you'll see a lot as you're playing music throughout the years. Allegro is a moderate walking pace. Feels pretty fast as you're playing, and we'll probably take an opportunity to play one of these exercises at the allegro tempo. So we're going to start by looking at number 14, the G major scale. Now, if you're a if you're a viola or a cello, these notes look very easy to you. These are the first, this is the G major scale that you've been playing since you were a fourth grader. So it's not going to be too much of a challenge for you guys, although it's still a great review. But for violins, you're going to notice that instead of starting on your open G, you start on 3-finger G on the D string. Okay, and what that's going to mean is that your second finger is going to be low on both the A string and the E string. Remember, a low 2 means that your first and second finger are touching. Okay, this does not apply to viola or cello this week, because if you look at your lesson book, your scale starts on your G string. Okay, so a little bit different depending on what instrument you play. What I'm going to do right now is play through the G major scale for the violins, what it'll sound like for you if you're a violin, and then also viola and cello, I'll play it for you separate. It's the same notes, it's the same pitches, but just so you have an idea of the difference, I'll play them both for you. Number 14 is made up of eighth notes and quarter notes. We know the eighth notes are half a beat. So when we count those first 4 eighth notes, we're going to say 1 and 2 and. Then our next notes are quarter notes, 3, 4. So the whole time you play this exercise, you're thinking 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Longer bows on the 3, 4. So if I'm a violin, this is what number 14 is going to sound like. Here's that low 2. And back down. Okay. If I am a cello or a viola, and again, I'm playing this on a violin, so cellos, your notes will obviously be much lower, but I want you to hear what it sounds like starting on open G. It'll sound like this. down. So you can take some time to practice through that. Again, the notes shouldn't be too difficult. Unless you're a violin, you have those low twos to think about. But for the most part, these notes are things that we know we've been playing for a long time. And it's an excellent review. So you can take a minute to play through that either on your own, or you can rewind the video and play it along with me at either point. If we all played it together, even though our notes are written differently, it would sound excellent all together. We'd all be playing the same pitches, just in different octaves from each other. And one other thing to point out is that there is a retake. There's one rest. It's at the end of measure 4. And during that rest, you're going to pick up your bow and do a nice retake. Okay. You probably noticed when I was playing, I wasn't all the way down at the frog. I also wasn't all the way up at the tip. I was trying to hang out in the middle of my bow. And that's how generally when you have something written with those quicker notes, the eighth notes, you're going to hang out in the middle of your bow and then do nice full bows for your quarter notes. So we're going to move on to number 15. This is a short one, but it has a really important concept that goes along with it. Number 15 is called the G major arpeggio, and arpeggio is a word that you're going to see a lot this year and in the future as well. It's a musical word that means you're going to take a scale. So we just played the G major scale. This is the G major arpeggio, and only play notes 1, 3, 5, and 8. 1, 3, 5, and 8. So if you wrote out on a piece of paper the notes that we just played for the G major scale, actually you can just look at number 14. Note number 1, of course, is G. Okay, we're going to skip the A and skip to the third note, that's B. Then the fifth note is D. And last but not least, the eighth note is another G. So an arpeggio is a pattern that we can play within every key, just like how we can play a scale for every key, we can play an arpeggio for every key. And so that's something that we'll be doing as warm-ups from now until forever. Even I do that when I practice. So let me play for you what an arpeggio sounds like, okay, so you can kind of get that pattern in your ear. This is number 15. Okay, so that's another thing to add to your practice, the scale and the arpeggio for the key of G major. Okay, now I have to flip. You don't have to flip. This is still page 5 for you. We're looking at number 16. Number 16 is a duet, and when we meet in person, we're going to be able to split up our team to play the duet together. So I want you to learn both parts. Let's start with the bottom line, because the bottom line should feel pretty easy for you, okay? Again, this time I'll play as if I'm a viola or cello. I'll start on my open G. Violins, you start 3-finger G, and you have to remember your low 2 on that C natural. But everyone right now, go ahead and play with me. This should be pretty easy sight reading. Number 16, the B line, so the bottom line. These are nice long half notes. So before I was talking about staying in the middle of your bow for those eighth notes, for a half note, I want you to start all the way down at the frog and see if you can get all the way to the tip for each of these half notes. Okay, nice, beautiful, full bows. So my first note is G. I'm going to get myself ready here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Should be pretty straightforward. All notes we know, and it's not overly fast if you're playing the bottom. Those half notes you hold for a long time. So now we have to take a look at the top line, the A line. This is a great example of how parts can fit together when you're playing in an orchestra or in an ensemble with other musicians. If you take a look, the B line starts with a half note. The A line starts with eighth notes, and so we're thinking how many eighth notes are going to fit into that half note. Okay. Remember, eighth notes are each worth half a beat, which means for them to be worth 1 beat, you need to play 2 of them. right? So 2/8 notes equal 1 beat. We are playing 4/8 notes, and that's going to equal 2 beats, the same as that half note. So when you're thinking about how these things fit together, 4/8 notes fit into one of those half notes. So it's going to be much faster on the top. Okay, it's going to go like, actually very similar to the G major scale warm-up we did. 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3. Okay. If you take a minute to kind of play through this, I think you'll find it looks a little intimidating because the notes change more frequently. But these are all notes you know, and it's the same things that we've been doing in the other two exercises. So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you. I'll play the violin line, so the higher octave, but again, viola and cello, you can play along with me and it'll sound correct. It should sound like the same notes that you're playing. And we're going to give this a try. If it's tough for you and you need to pause and practice it, that is okay too. Okay, starting in the middle of my bow. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Okay, the only part that might give you a little bit of trouble is that fourth measure. Those eighth notes, instead of having doubles, you probably noticed in measures 1, 2, and 3, every time you had an eighth note, it was the same pitch, the same note twice, like G, G, B, B. At the end, in measure 4, every eighth note is different. F sharp, E, D, F sharp. So if you're struggling with that, and you need to do it slowly, after a few times of doing that, you'll be able to build the speed up to what it's supposed to be. Again, if you're a viola or cello, it'll sound like this. Okay. And so the best way to practice this once you have these two lines down is to actually use the technology you have, use your Chromebook, and record yourself playing one of the lines, and then you can play the other line along with yourself on the recording. So, and like I said, we will do that in person once we get together for our lesson. All right, and then moving on finally to number 17. Number 17 is the last one, your last assignment for the day or for the week. And number 17 mixes up the rhythms a little bit. So everything we've played today has had the same rhythm. I don't know if you've noticed. Aside from the B line of 16, everything has been going 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Now in number 17, it is different. So we have to count each measure on its own. Each measure changes. So if you look at the first measure, we're on 17, the Outback, you'll see it's quarter, eighth, 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 quarter. So if I'm going to count that, it's 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You can even play that on like an open A string. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay, try that with me. Ready? And here we go. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay. If we look at and we're leaving out the note names for a moment. We're just talking about the rhythm. If you take a look at the second measure, sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit. If you take a look at the second measure, that should look very familiar. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. We've been doing that all day. That should be easy. Take a look at the third measure. Even though the notes are different from the first measure, it's the same rhythm. Okay, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And then the fourth measure, 1 and 2 and 3, rest, and that rest has a retake. Let's see if we can do the the first line, okay, because this is a piece where you play both lines. It's not a duet. But we'll play the top line of number 17, and then we'll regroup and play the bottom line, okay? So remember, if you're a violin, this is a low 2. That note is called G. It's high G, low 2 on the E string. If you're a viola or cello, it's 3 fingers on the D string. 3 fingers on the D string. Or 4, sorry. If you're a cello, it's 4. Everyone is a little bit different. Here is the top line of 17. Ready? And here we go. 4. and then we'd be ready to play the second line. Okay, so again, with everything, it's okay if you can't play that perfectly right now. I actually wouldn't expect you to be able to play it perfectly right now. That's why we're practicing it before our lesson. So it's okay if you can't play it perfectly, but you're going to take some time this week to practice it so that you can get better at it, right? Doing it slower, if you can't do it quite the speed that I'm playing, if you want to slow it down, that'll be helpful. And then we're going to go to the second line, and this time I'll be a viola or a cello. So just know I'm going to switch and play into that different octave. Okay. So here's the second line. Again, if you feel comfortable, you can play with me. Ready, and here we go. Good, a nice long half note at the end there. The thing that makes the second line challenging is it kind of feels like you're playing a scale at the beginning, and then it starts skipping notes. So really watch out for that. All right, so just to review again, your homework, the thing that you're going to be practicing is all of page 5. And when you come to your lesson next time, we will work together to play through these and then move on to something new. All right, so if you have any questions with this, feel free to email me or see me in class, and we'll work that out. But I hope this goes well, and we'll see you at your lesson.